Earnestly podcast. We're back here, not even 2 weeks after Marc Francois
Right?
back with us.
This might be a new speed record for us.
Dude, we so the last 2 years we've been, kind of been spotty in the pods, maybe 2, 3 a year, and all of a sudden now we two in 2 weeks now, and maybe more to come, that kind of thing. Mark, what's up, bud?
Yeah,
I mean, it
a
is
lot.
election time, so obviously we have to get it in.
Yeah, the
You know,
election is still, I guess we would say, underway as we're waiting for California to finish tabulating everything here.
yeah, I saw that on CNN. There's still a lot of House races to be called out there.
hmm hmm
There was a red wave here in Florida.
Yeah,
That's it.
I would say that's about the only place it crested.
Yeah. Yo. So
Texas, Texas and Florida broke about how we expected them to, but everything else, I think it would be fair to call it little more than a wake.
dude, I was wrong. I thought that the red wave would be here across country. Inflation will be the thing that did Democrats in, and certainly in Florida, we know DeSantis wins, Rubio wins. Obviously in Texas, Greg Abbott retains his seat. In Georgia, what's his face? Brian Kemp retains his governorship there as well too. But the
That
rest
one
of the
hurt.
country,
That was the one that, like, although I kind of expected that, like, it still bummed me out the most. Is that I just want Stacey Abrams to be in a position of legitimate power.
we gotta dig into that too. Maybe another podcast, because there was definitely some discontent with Abrams and some Democratic voters this time around, especially with black men. And I don't know exactly where to touch on that, because I want to do more research on it in the future.
Yeah, I have questions about that too, and I have some gut instincts, but I don't want to say anything out of pocket or that is
Right.
uninformed. So yeah, maybe we'll table that for a future pod and see if we can hop back on in less than a month's
Yeah.
time or
Yeah.
something to cover that.
Definitely. So, I mean, I got it wrong. I mean, I think even you thought that maybe a wave was coming, but you also were a little more apprehensive. But he's like, I don't know, wait, women's rights could save
Yeah,
this thing.
I had kind of said that the big if was that if the 18 to 29 crowd turned out, then it might take some of the energy out of the red wave, and it seems that's what happened. So, those voters that we kind of talked about last time as being a little tougher to quantify in polling leading up to election day, they did turn out, and it seems like that young people, black women, as always, had a lot to do with preventing this from being a complete referendum on Joe Biden.
Yeah, it was two things. It was definitely women's rights, which again I thought I thought inflation would cancel it out, and then Trump. I think it's safe to say that independents, NPAs like myself, we're done with it. Move on. None of the fringe shit.
Yeah, and it looks like a lot of the right wing is starting to sell their stock and coming to terms with the reality that, look, if Donald Trump is our standard bearer in 2024, we're screwed. I think Lindsey Graham said almost that verbatim. I just moments ago sent you a clip that popped, or a quote that popped up on my TV of Mitt Romney comparing Trump to an aging pitcher on the mound, just throwing out meatballs. So yeah, and then I also sent you that other one that was the NBC News exit
The
polling from
poll in
Florida
Florida.
that showed 65% of Republican voters in Florida. That's just Republican voters, mind you.
Mhm.
65% of Republican voters would prefer Trump not to run in 2024.
A
So,
lot of that though also too, in doing my little research here in Florida, is that a lot of them want DeSantis to be here for 4 more years, the full 4 years before he runs for president. That's so that could be a little bit skewed too. I don't know
mm-hmm.
if it does come to fruition that Trump and DeSantis will go against each other in a primary, if they would come out to the polls for one or the other. I don't know. I mean, obviously he's very popular in the state, but I don't know if on a national election if they would change.
He is definitely starting to pick up more traction. I just saw a story, I want to say yesterday or the day before, on it was like Rolling Stone or one of the big ones that I wouldn't expect, with,
Right.
like, kind of a cover type story of talking about how a lot of the Republicans who've sold their stock on the Trump of it all are finding a home in the DeSantis camp, which is ironic because it's like if you compare their positions on issues, they're pretty much in lockstep. And I mean, DeSantis earned himself the focus of, like, John Oliver in Last Week Tonight, specifically, kind of riffing on how he was modeling himself after as a younger, mini Florida Trump when he originally won his first term. So I don't kind of makes me laugh that people would say that, but regardless, the support and the fundraising is demonstrating that right wing and center right voters are finding comfort with DeSantis.
Yeah, seeing that a lot here. Debbie down here is seeing that definitely. Like I said, I'm a little more skeptical because of the whole. There's a selfish reason to them. A lot of people I talk to, Republicans who love Trump, say they want DeSantis to be here 4 years before he goes to national prominence. Whatever I mean. But the rest of the red wave, I mean,
look, just driving around, especially outside of like Dade and Broward. I mean, the yard, sort of that yard sign like polling that I was able to do just with my own eyes. There was a whole lot more DeSantis signs than Chris signs. Kind of drive.
I mean, you don't win 60-40 without pulling Democratic votes. Also, let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
I have a few friends who are Democrats that voted for DeSantis that told me to vote.
I mean,
for DeSantis.
Even when you and I talked about it privately, you said like basically fuck Chris. Like I can't stand
Chris,
that guy. Like he's
look,
terrible.
I mean, Anna Navarro was correct on The View. She goes that this Chris is a corpse, and that's insult to corpse.
Yeah,
she's not wrong about that.
He's an empty shirt.
Yeah, I mean, you're never gonna. I mean, look, I'm not saying that Nikki Fried's gonna win was gonna win, but I guarantee she probably performed a little better in the polls than Chris would have.
Mm-hmm.
And probably one of the most troubling quotes, if you're a Democrat, especially too, was that night I saw was that they said that the party right now, the Democratic Party right now in Florida, is virtually extinct. When you lose Palm Beach and Miami to turn red, two of the bluest counties in the state of Florida to turn red. Now, granted, that could be also the fact that it's because the governor's just really popular in general. That it could be an anomaly.
No, it's not. It's not just in the governor's mansion, because like I was watching the election day coverage on MSNBC on like Wednesday morning or something like that last week, and I heard Simone Sanders, the former communications director for the Biden campaign, and other people who work around campaign management and polling and whatnot, talking about that. We always kind of talked about like Florida and Ohio as big purple states, bellwether type states for determining presidential elections, and that moving forward, we're probably just going to have to mark up Florida, as a big red state. And the likelihood of a Democrat winning Florida in, like, for example, a presidential election, at least in the foreseeable future, is exceedingly low.
It's funny because,
for all intents and purposes, it's a red state until proven otherwise.
Well, Obama won it twice. Okay. Now, granted, it was in marginal numbers, obviously.
Sure.
Trump won it,
and it was always a flip flopping state for, I would say, the first, the four preceding presidential elections. It went blue, it went red, it went back and forth.
So here's my question though. So what happened here between, say, 2016, maybe in 2013, 2014, and now? The messaging is off with Democrats now? What's going on?
I'm gonna, without having numbers in front of me, I would think it probably has more to do with some of the demographic shifts in where people are living nowadays. So, for example, in the West Coast, we've seen a big exodus of right-wing voters from California who can't handle, the People's Republic of Gavin Newsom and, the left-wing wokeism of it all. I'm saying all this tongue-in-cheek, of course.
Yeah.
Fleeing to states like Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Idaho. A lot of that also is driven by the tax base. So, you got to bear in mind that states like Texas and Florida don't have a state income tax. So I know that, for example, communities in Florida have expanded massively. For example, in Lee County, where Fort Myers is, that was a huge contributor to a lot of the devastation surrounding Hurricane Ian, was the extreme population growth that has existed in Lee County since 1970. So I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that a lot of your New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania type people who love to come to Florida have been fleeing, like conservatives from those states have been fleeing to Florida, chasing no state income tax and chasing, politicians that they feel like better represent their views. So when you talk about the population growth in Florida over the last 10 to 20 years, I'm going to bet that it's mostly registered Republicans and registered Democrats who make up that group of new Floridians over the last 15 years or so.
We'll touch more on DeSantis and Trump in the next thing. We'll talk about Trump's announcement in a second. A couple of notes from the election. Obviously, we mentioned Greg Abbott won re-election against Beto O'Rourke in the governor's race. This is now 2 losses to Beto in 2 cycles. Senate race in 2018. Now, granted, he came close to being Ted Cruz in 2018, but now he loses to Greg Abbott in a year that was pretty ripe for a Democrat to take over, and yet that did not happen. What is Beto's 2 left for the state? Or what's going on?
I think that's probably part of it. Is that you're gonna need some, like, just to keep it back on like presidential stuff. I think if a Democrat is gonna win a gubernatorial election in Texas, they're gonna have to sound a lot more like Joe Biden than Bernie Sanders. However, I think it probably is more a reflection on the constituency and the electorate in Texas, in that you just don't have very many people that agree with left-wing messaging. It's really that simple. I mean, look at the South in how they were voting, from say like the 50s until 1970. Even though the national energy was slowly starting to shift around supporting the civil rights movement, you had all these states in the South that were still like the ballot measures and whatnot in these states were still supportive of Jim Crow, the old ways, all of those things. I think a lot of that remains true in a state like Texas now, is that Texans don't want gun control. Texans are evangelical Christians who would count themselves as pro-life. It's a lot of these different things that a progressive platform doesn't resonate with them.
I think so to say Texas is probably now center right now. It's not right, but it's probably center right. Like, I think they're open to some progressive ideas, but I don't think they don't want the major shift.
Sure, and I'm sure that it varies, county by county, district by district, because again, this is personal experience bias notwithstanding. Mm-hmm. Talking to a friend who lives in Texas in a slightly more cosmopolitan area, a little more moderate area. For example, their local school district took measures that were more in line with sort of the outcry in the wake of Uvalde that we would expect, that ran against kind of the messaging that Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick and Ted Cruz and these other people were peddling. So you do have these little bluish purple pockets throughout the state. However, I just don't think it's big enough to overcome some of the more natural tendencies of people to continue to vote Republican. I mean, short of the Republican nominee holding, holding Nazi rallies and stuff like that.
Right.
You're just not going to turn the tide in Texas, at least not anytime soon.
Do you still consider it a purple state now at this point, or do you still think it's still really red?
Not really, no.
This is talk for the last couple cycles though about like this being a purple state and maybe turning blue by say the end of this decade.
Well, and I think it's also noteworthy to focus on voter suppression. It's no secret that since 2018, voter suppression has been a tactic of the Republican Party for a long time. However, it has become a primary method by which they gerrymander. It's kind of the double-edged sword of gerrymandering and voter suppression, and a great reflection of that is the degree of attention and focus being paid by Governor Abbott and his voter fraud investigation units or whatever, and the attention they're paying to Harris County, the most diverse county in Texas. Like, that to me is a contributor to this conversation that probably doesn't get enough attention. And I'm not saying it's a primary cause, but that the correlation between the energy being spent by Texas Republicans investigating voter fraud. And where those investigations are being focused is a underappreciated contributor to outcomes.
So, as a Beto O'Rourke, what's next?
You mean specifically for like what is
political
the next
career?
move?
I mean, did he try again in 2026? Is he go for a Senate seat again in 2024? Is there still anything left, any juice left in that?
Probably not.
Because I mean, we were looking at Beto, dude. Remember this? You and I talking about this on the podcast like 2016, 2017. That Beto had the maybe he was the next Obama juice.
I think
next Obama, maybe, you know.
I'm probably going to play here the same card that I played when you asked me over the summer about who should the Democratic nominee be if not Joe Biden. And I said, well, I don't really have a good answer to that, but it shouldn't be anybody that we're already familiar with.
Right.
It needs to be somebody from the orbit of progressive politicians, but it needs to be a new face and a new voice. I'm gonna say kind of the same thing with Beto and Texas, and I love Beto. I love his messaging. I love his style. I love his willingness to use profanity and his ability to.
He's very passionate. I will say that.
Yeah, very passionate. Speaks very plainly. He's done a very effective job at individually connecting with voters that you would never think would end up supporting him. He had a whole lot of red cap wearers on his. In his political ads and whatnot in the run up to the election. But I just don't think continuing to trot him out there, it's like that he's going to break through. And I don't think Texas progressives want to wait 40 years for a Beto, for Governor Beto, like people did for a President Biden. I don't think continuing to just play that same card makes sense.
Good point. Kari Lake loses in Arizona.
Dang,
she was the favorite to win that race, and by a fairly decent margin.
And one of the scarier voices I saw out there in the landscape, like lady's batshit crazy.
No, her and Marciano probably the two voices of the Trump endorsed candidates. So to me, they were like, whoa, okay,
yeah. I mean, just some of the comments she was making, like directed at individual reporters in the week leading up to the election about how she was going to create commissions to force journalists to finally start doing their jobs again. Like, I mean, it was really.
Does she actually believe that though? Or is she just saying that to just kind of be like a Trump acolyte? Because like she was literally a female Trump. Okay.
No, okay. People don't understand exactly like how bad Arizona is, and. Give you an example. Obviously, I'm very tapped in with sort of like the right wing hate watch, if you will. Mm-hmm. And Arizona, Phoenix in particular, is one of the cities and states where we regularly see people out there out there marching in full Nazi regalia, SS uniforms, swastika banners. Like when you talk about some of the most egregious entrenched right-wing, ultra-right propaganda and white supremacist propaganda, it has a home in Arizona. And so I believe wholeheartedly that a lot of these Arizona representatives are people who align with a lot of these white nationalist, Christo-fascist, whatever the hell you want to call it, beliefs.
Now, unlike Texas,
Kari Lake is no exception.
Now, unlike Texas, though, Arizona is definitely a purple state. I mean, blue
mean,
governor,
obviously,
blue senator.
They got blue governor.
Joe Biden has won it. Joe Biden won it.
Joe Biden won Arizona. No, I mean, kind of similar to Nevada. If you were to just look at a colorized map, it might mislead you. But like all of the districts that go red are the most sparsely populated, and the two most populated districts, the ones that surround like Flagstaff and like Maricopa County, Phoenix, Scottsdale area, those are breaking blue.
And I feel like now,
no different than like how Clark County, where Las Vegas is, and
correct.
Don't ask me because I don't know the name of the county where Reno and Carson City sit. But like those two densely populated pockets of Nevada are going blue, and then all the rural areas with 6 voters are going red.
Red.
Okay, fine. But that's misleading because Arizona's not a red state. Nevada's not a red state. They're firmly purple.
And that's very important too, because if you're a Democrat and you are saying, as you just said a couple minutes ago, that Florida is officially a red state, that's now a the way we look at the elections and we say, okay, we have these battleground states, we have these states who will rule no matter what, red no matter what. And you're saying now that Florida is now one of those, it's red no matter what now. It is important for Democrats now to, if you don't lose Florida, you better work on Georgia, you better work on Arizona still, and Nevada to cancel that out.
And you can't let Michigan and Wisconsin become Florida and Texas.
Right.
Because you can't lose Florida, Texas, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
Because Florida is 29. Because Florida's 29 votes.
Yeah, those 4 states become firmly red, and Democrats are fucked in 24.
Yeah, because Florida is 29 electoral votes. Boom. Okay, so you need to cancel it out somewhere else. You got to find your votes. You need to find.
What is it, like 3 of the last 5 presidential elections that were close were swung by Florida?
So again, if you're going to trade Florida for a combination of Georgia and Arizona, okay, roll with that.
Yeah,
that's fine. Then you're good. But otherwise, you can't lose Florida, and then you can't also lose control of those 2 states you mentioned, and then even the Rust Belt in Michigan and Wisconsin.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So that's very important. But I didn't follow the Arizona race until the last couple of weeks. Like, wow, I was like, who is this lady? Like, who is this lady? I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's obviously my next door neighbor. Got a lot of friends and family there, and of course, the Arizona San Diego connection is inextricable. So it's definitely something that kind of, by virtue of all of those things, it finds its way into my timeline. And yeah, I was honestly really worried about Arizona. I was really, really worried about Arizona.
But she's not too bright, though. If you're going to insult John McCain Republicans, okay?
That, I think, is what ultimately did her in.
Like, you didn't learn 2020 what happened in Trump 2020?
You could probably get away with that in some other states, take that low-hanging fruit, but like in Arizona, you're going to go after John McCain. Yeah, you don't like being employed.
No.
You don't like being employed.
Not very smart.
And it's one of those things that leads me to believe as well that she truly is an ideologue on this stuff. Yeah. Because if she was just like milking the energy from the Trump of it all and the MAGA of it all, she probably wouldn't have gone there.
Yeah. But
she would have known that as a zonie. Like,
But being Trumpy, you don't think broadly, of course.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be the third rail of Arizona politics is talking shit about John McCain. Like,
I think the least surprising race of all, and the governor's race was probably the one in Pennsylvania, the Mastriano race against Shapiro. I mean, Mastriano was probably worse than Kerry Lake was.
Yeah,
on messaging.
No, I mean he was bad. I mean, calling people on trial for sedition like political prisoners and whatnot. Like Mastriano was scary.
Yeah,
he was scary. Like, she's scary and dumb. He's scary with half a brain.
Yeah.
Okay, third of a brain. But like, but no, I mean, they were both very, like, they are candidates that people should be afraid of. And I touched on this before. There was something like 299 or 306 candidates that openly touted still 2 years later that the election was stolen. Despite the fact that it literally sparked a insurrection at the steps of our Capitol to say that and to peddle that lie.
Right.
And just this week on the circus, I'm sure you caught it. I didn't watch
I'm watching it tonight.
The reel of the of Tim Miller, the conservative conservative reporter, joining the circus squad, and basically throwing his hands up with Steve Bannon and more or less cutting the interview short because Bannon is very clearly bald-faced lying. Like, you can see he's smirking as he's saying the shit, talking about the 2020 election still being stolen. And Tim's like, I'm not even going to do this with you. I'm not going to let you continue to do this on my air.
By the way, I'm a huge fan of Tim Miller. He's the reason why I listen to the Bulwark all the time.
I really love Tim and his pearl necklace. Like, it's great.
Old Jeb Bush.
That's such a great flex.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think Tim's fantastic. Like, I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I think
on policy, but his heart's in the right place. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
How the hell do Democrats have control of the Senate after all this red wave talk, all this stuff? Not only are they still in the status quo Senate right now, pre-election, they may have a shot to actually gain a seat if Warnock beats Herschel Walker, December 4th.
Yeah.
How's that possible, dude?
Roe and Dobbs. I mean,
and Trumpism too, maybe Trumpism also. Less of that probably on the.
I think somewhat. I think somewhat. You know, I would say.
I mean, the Fetterman thing definitely has
the cake. The cake is Roe. The icing is rejection of neo-fascism.
I mean, because you had Blake Masters in Arizona, who was a Trump guy. You had Oz, who's a Trump guy, senator race, who lost also too. Who's other senator?
Oz is just a charlatan. Come on, he's a quack charlatan.
But Trump didn't help him.
He's just looking for attention. Some idiot at a cocktail party told him he should run for the Pennsylvania Senate seat, and because he's not very smart, he listened to them.
Well, at least he conceded the race.
Thank God.
At least he did the right thing, conceded the race. You know what I'm saying?
I'm ready for all the shorts and hoodies in Congress.
Fetterman. I mean, I'm not that surprised he won, though. Look, it's clear that there was a lot of concern. If you look at the numbers in the governor's race, where Shapiro won 13 points against Mastriano, but Fetterman was up by 4 points.
Yeah,
was the final tally. Okay, so there's clearly a 9% gap there. That maybe there's some independents and maybe some Democrats who are probably concerned that probably like Fetterman, but because of the health issues, that maybe they're concerned, and that's why that gap was a little smaller than the governor's race, right? Mm-hmm. That sounds accurate.
Well, and I would venture to guess too that, and I've not spent enough time in Pennsylvania to say this with like on the ground expert knowledge, but just the little bit that I do know, if from nothing else, sports. I don't imagine Pennsylvanians took well to the fact that Oz just isn't one of them.
Yeah,
that's one of those states, especially in the Northeast, sort of like the middle eastern seaboard, northern South, like there's still a lot of state pride that lingers from 250 years ago. And I feel like Pennsylvania is probably one of those states where that tends to hang on a little more. And so just the sheer fact that he's an outsider, and I don't mean a political outsider, like he literally does not live within the state of Pennsylvania. He lives in New Jersey.
And he got him about technicality.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the middle of the road guys, political centrists, right, center right people, they look at him and they go, okay, Fetterman looks like my uncle, the pipe fitter, who I break his balls at the Thanksgiving dinner table, but like ultimately he's a good guy, versus this quack doctor from Jersey. Like, I could see a lot of independent center right, center left people just going, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one.
Go back to Oprah. Like, I don't know what you're doing.
It's kind of bad when Oprah makes your career, but she endorses the other guy. And only that too. Also, Fetterman looks like a PA guy. He looks like a guy that's because the blue collar is hell.
Fetterman definitely looks like a guy who would punch you in the face for wearing a Dallas Cowboys jersey at an Eagles game. Like, come on.
And I saw I'm looking to tweet quick that I think Crystal Ball made so much sense on this last week after the election about Fetterman. She tweeted, let me see right here. And this is why he connected with the voters there too. Fetterman leaned into economic populism, pro-union, anti-corporate price gouging. He was the furthest left of the Democratic Senate candidates and won the most indies, even after suffering a stroke. Dems have a winning model in econ populism if they care to embrace it.
DNC leadership, take note. Like, focus on the checking account. Like, make it about jobs. Make it about money. Make it about union busting. Make it about corporate greed. Like, I don't so much of the Democratic messaging, I feel like, just misses the ball, and use all of those tools as a means to impugn the bullshit narrative around crime, and that the rise in crime is not, the suggestion that the rise in crime is not directly connected or correlated to the rise in poverty is fucking nonsense. And that's how the Democrats need to focus, because they really screwed up. in their messaging when they were getting attacked for being soft on crime in the lead up to this midterm election. And I feel like they got by the skin of their ass, despite how badly they messaged around those particular issues. And we really need to focus on the disingenuous narrative being peddled by the right around crime, because crime is a result of poverty. You interrupt poverty by providing housing, providing healthcare, providing food, providing internet, providing services, providing education. That's how you break poverty. The way you break crime is by breaking poverty.
So true. So true. Common sense, in really my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, take the Fetterman message, reapply it to all these other districts, all these other up for grab states. It could prove to be the savior in a place like Wisconsin or Michigan, where you've got, it's a blue collar electorate. A lot of the union has been, it's kind of like purple union guys. I think the Fetterman playbook needs to be sort of the foundation of the Democratic platform going into 2024.
So here's the one thing.
And secondary to that, all these bills that have been shelved in the Senate that have made it through the House, whether it's the Green New Deal, George Floyd justice and policing, more, the more intact sort of OG version of Build Back Better without all the Republican pork and concessions. Slam that shit through. Like, get it on Joe Biden's desk yesterday. The minute you're back in session, you got to start having votes.
I'm glad you mentioned Joe Biden, because that's the last thing I want to do to close out this part of the conversation. So if there's one negative about this for me, but Democrats actually holding firm, they're gonna lose the House, but not as bad as we thought it's gonna be, and they hold on to the Senate, is that this is gonna make Joe Biden more, in my opinion, more viable to want to run in 2024. And I still remain clear on my stance on this. And I know you agree with me on this, that Joe Biden should not be the Democratic nominee 100%. For President of the United States 2024. I still think he should not be that.
Trump and Biden again in 24, I just my I hate it here will reach levels I never thought possible.
I mean, I'm not saying Biden is doing a horrific job either. He's had some wins last couple months. I mean, he's brought some jobs back here or there. Let's cut through the leaves here. He's had some wins last couple months.
But like, if we're comparing the scorecard of like promises made versus promises kept,
right? No, not even close. Right. And I mean, it is what it is. I don't think if you're a Democrat and you want Joe Biden not to run, I think that's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt, because now I think this is going to.
Yeah.
This is going to.
Well, and
I'm
going to I would rather see the bills get signed into law than, fret over Joe Biden getting easy layups. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that, especially, with this midterm proving not to be a referendum on the Democratic leadership, and, the handful of things getting done that they did manage to get across the finish line prior to Election Day. And then kind of, even more so if they continue to take these bills off the shelf that I just mentioned. Yeah, I think it does unfortunately provide a lot of momentum for Joe Biden, and it creates a precarious position for any potential primary challenger. But I mean, we can't elect an 80-year-old man to the presidency. Look, I'm not saying Joe Biden is unqualified.
Yeah.
But he is obviously not the man he was 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Nobody is at this age. And the arrogance of Democratic leadership and of liberal elites is just unfathomable at times.
It really is. It really, really is. Okay, so let's stick to the political spiel real quick. Tonight is the night where Donald Trump, former president of the United States, number 45, is going to make an announcement tonight. Now, on Facebook, I said last week that I think that the announcement is going to be that he went to Geico. Switch to Geico as opposed to run for president. I don't know. We'll see. I mean,
he's running. I mean, yeah, I've said this numerous times. I'll say it again. If the man has a pulse and he's not legally ineligible, he is going to.
I mean, according to him, he said I'm most likely going to probably something. What did he say on the last trek he did last week?
Yeah, he keeps
likely.
Well, he did an interview with I believe it was Newsmax or something like that, and he goes, well, I think they want me to, and I think you're gonna like what I have to say. He never says anything of substance until he actually says the thing. So, like, quit trying to read the tea leaves.
You gotta admit,
what it is.
You gotta admit, this dude is just entertaining as hell, though. You have to admit, dude. Take away the bullshit.
I would say yes. If there had not been so many real world consequences to the crazy shit that he has been saying since 2015, I would laugh a little more easily. But we literally had an insurrection in our capital because of the crazy shit that this man says.
Right.
And the Speaker of the House, her husband had his skull bashed in with a hammer by a crazy person who buys all the conspiracies that his followers are selling. I can't laugh at shit when that's happening.
That's true. No, I feel you. So once, because this podcast will come out before, we'll record this before the announcement, obviously, and it will come out before the announcement, obviously. Is it a 1% chance this is some nothing burger that he's gonna say something different?
I mean,
what would he say if it wasn't?
I suppose it's not impossible, but I mean, they've been saying November 14th for a week and a half.
Could it be a new? Could it be a new media thing? A new media platform? Possibly they've been saying for a couple of years now they could be doing that. I don't know.
I mean, maybe, but no, because I don't see it. I just don't see it. He's so arrogant. And the other thing is, when you listen to people who are not necessarily Trump surrogates, but like the conservatives who get brought onto liberal media and have access to people in the Trump orbit, he believes that his greatest protection against legal action is holding the office of the president. So as long as he is feeling like he's in trouble, he's going to continue to run for president because he kind of, in a way, knows that's the only thing that might hold the Justice Department at bay. So as long as that's the case, he's going to be a Republican nominee. Whether he wins it this time or not, hard to say. Everyone said there's no way that idiot's going to win it all, on a stage full of seasoned politicians in 2016,
okay.
and he stomped through.
So let's get to it now. Let's assume he's going to run. Let's map out the next year and a half of campaigning, because honestly, let's be real. Once he announces, we're on the way to 2024.
Yeah,
you'll start because you'll hear announcements from other candidates.
That more or less kicks off the presidential campaign season.
Right, because you'll hear the other guys that may run, women may run. Nikki Haley's and Youngkin in Virginia may run. DeSantis may announce something in this coming months. Who knows? Let's map it out.
I wouldn't be surprised if Marjorie Taylor Greene does. So, secondary thing that I don't want to go down a rabbit hole and take us off track, but worth noting, the likelihood of Kevin McCarthy becoming Speaker of the House is exceedingly low.
Yeah, Mitch might keep that, right?
It's not outside the realm of possibility to me that the MAGA caucus is going to put Marjorie Taylor Greene in a prominent leadership position. She's already going to be the chairperson of the House Government Oversight Committee. So she's going to have an opportunity to be on the national stage a lot over the next 2 years. She's dumb and arrogant. I wouldn't be surprised to see her run and to get an disgusting and nauseating.
But who does she appeal to, though? The question: who does she appeal to? Which demographic, though, of that party?
QAnon, the far right, the same
evangelicals
people,
too.
The same people who stormed the Capitol.
So technically,
the same people who claim to be evangelical and voted for Herschel Walker over Dr. Warnock.
So technically, actually, that will actually hurt Trump, though, because that will take away votes.
It dilutes the base. I mean, it pulls. Being frank, it pulls a lot of the white supremacists out of the Trump camp and into hers.
I do think all
the tinfoil hats and the red armband crowd would, I believe, find themselves rocking with Marjorie Taylor Greene over Trump.
There is a wild card, Mark. There is a wild card here in this race, assuming things map the way it is. I think Mike Pence is the big wild card. Here's why. He has no chance of winning
No,
the nomination.
he scoops up the old people that don't like
Thank
the
you.
crazy talk.
And no. Well, not only that, he also scoops up a large part of the evangelicals too.
That's what I mean. Is like the people who are evangelical and held their nose and voted for Trump, knowing that he's not really a Christian.
Right.
I think they could break for Pence.
Right. So I think you take away if Pence can take away 7% of the Republican vote, that's going to give the clear way for a Youngkin if he runs, or DeSantis if he runs, of course, to milk. That might be the play going forward.
Yeah. So let me put it this way: I see a Republican primary that could prove to be a bloodbath and very destructive to current relationships within the GOP landscape. However, Republicans are really good at being team players, and so whoever's carrying the red flag into November, they're going to vote for.
No, that I understand, but I think
but
unlike 2016,
there's going to be a lot of relationships are going to be irreparably damaged within the Republican.
Unlike 2016, though, I think there's a lot of Republicans who learned the lesson how to let Trump have had space to gain traction. I think this time around, because we know they know what.
I hope, and I would think that you're going to see one of the big differences too that really upset me about the 2016 process is how much liberal media gave airtime to Trump just because it was clickbait and Nielsen bait. I would like to think that, given the retrospect that we have of the last 6 years, that liberal media outlets would be a little more responsible to not give as much free air to whichever right-wing crazy person is spouting racist, misogynist, xenophobic, whatever crap, that they get less air than they did before. But yeah, it's gonna be a really ugly battle in the Republican primary process. It's gonna damage a lot of the current relationships within the camp. But regardless of whoever emerges, it's they're gonna fall in line by November.
Yes, I selfishly I hope Trump runs this because obviously doing what I do, easy content for me. Obviously, but I'm really fascinated.
I don't want to fall into saying, "Oh, I would love to see this person as an opponent," because every time that that gets into the crap of like the DNC funding crazy people in primaries because they think it makes a shoe-in the general. I don't want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like any of the prominent possibilities that are out there for the Republican Party. I don't think there's even one reasonable person who has a chance, a Jeb Bush or a John Kasich type person. I don't think there's anybody out there that has a reasonable chance, and so I don't really like any of the ideas that I'm hearing. But yeah, it's going to be a mess. I think the Republican primary is going to be a mess.
So let me ask you this real quick then. Trump announces tonight, okay? And let's say DeSantis announces at some point, and other candidates announce. Does Trump win the primary? Prediction right now. Right now, we'll ask this again as this process goes on. But right now, leading into this whole thing, I still say yes. He'll win the primary.
I say yes if, and only because I don't have a name in the back of my head right away. But if somebody out there exists who can politely excite the far right, more politely in terms of like the mainstream, can sort of be a little more under the radar with some of the craziest shit and not openly, not welcome the conspiracy theorists with open arms. If that guy exists or gal exists in the GOP camp, they can beat Trump. But his Q rating on the right wing is pretty hard to overcome.
And there's also the loyalty factor. He did a lot for us. I may want to.
There's a belief that doesn't actually hold factual water that Trump did a lot for us on the right, us being on the right, or that there's this narrative that like Trump was the first one in a long time to gain respect for America in the national on the global stage, which is not remotely accurate. But it's something that people in that camp believe.
Yeah.
So do I think that if you're talking about a subset of the electorate that only includes those people, did those talking points have merit? Yeah.
All right, let's pivot a little bit off some politics here. You were actually we know this because the last podcast you did, you were leaving the day after or a couple days after. You're just in New York for a little while. How was your trip?
Yes, I was.
And
greatest city in the world.
Well, that's where I'm born at. Come on now.
Yeah, actually, I was up in your neighborhood of birth a little bit.
Brooklyn?
No, I thought you were from Queens.
No, I'm Brooklyn.
Oh, well, okay.
I am a Mets fan. I'm a Mets fan, yes, but
I was in Brooklyn and Queens. So.
Okay, you were. How was it?
Yeah, it was fantastic, man. I always feel better the minute I touch down in New York. It was my first time there in 3 years.
Okay.
So, my first 2 days were spent out in the suburbs in Long Island, and even then, I was already getting more juiced. I had some fantastic Italian food. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself in Farmingdale, Long Island, I got to make a shameless plug for Vespa. It's a fantastic restaurant, and I had some of the best brajol I've had in 30 years. So, no, I was already feeling the electricity and sort of the Empire State of Mind of it all, the first day and a half. But man, I got into the city on Wednesday, and my whole I just vibrated on a higher level. My whole vibe switched up, and it looks like I'll probably move into New York in the next 6 months. So I can't wait.
I never would have thought it too, because I've known you 10 years now, and you are a California kid, dude. California through and through. But the thing is that it doesn't surprise me.
I'm a traveler and a chameleon too.
It's true, yes. And then the thing is also, I think your vibe actually fit New York. You have a little bit of edge to you that you'll fit New York.
Well, and when we first met, mind you, the first probably 6-7 years we knew each other, I had never been to New York. I didn't go to New York.
Really?
I had been taken as an infant, but that obviously doesn't count. I had not actually been to New York until 2017. That was the first time I really went and spent any time there. And then throughout 2018 and 2019, I went probably a couple dozen times. There was a stretch in 2019 where I was there every week for 3 months. Wow. And so and a lot of it, I was there by myself. So I was there for 3 to 5 days at a time with nothing to do but ride the subway, wander around, really get a feel for the city kind of at a ground level. And I absolutely fell in love.
Wow! So you're making a trek, That's awesome, man. I'm really happy for you. It's been a while. To talk about this. We'll bring it up here. You following the Lakers? Oh God, I gotta bring it up.
I'm following, but I'm not watching.
How many games you watch? Okay, they played 13 games this year. How many games you watched this year?
Half of one.
Really? That's the first game of the year, wasn't it?
I watched the first half of the first game, and I haven't watched the game since.
Now, is it because you're busy?
I've tapped in here and there. I've watched maybe 5-10 minutes at a time.
Is it because you're busy or you're discouraged?
Both. It's an unwatchable product right now.
Oh, wow.
Rob, Russ, and AD got to go.
So I did a podcast on Friday. I don't know if you saw that. I titled it, Should the Lakers Trade AD? At this point, he's the only guy of value you have that you can get back a nice return for a guy. Because the thing with me is that he's not going to get any better than he is now, first off. Let's start there.
Have I not been talking about his back since he was in New Orleans?
Yeah,
that was the biggest thing. That as soon as we started talking about AD, because anytime you have a big, bad, young center who is an all-star, and whether they become friends with Magic or with Kobe or with whoever, the talk starts. Right. It's a foregone conclusion they're going to be a Laker, whether it was Dwight Howard or AD or other people who haven't panned out that way. Anytime you get a big bad center in the league, the talk starts of okay, well, when are they going to sign with the Lakers? So that's been a thing for a while. And then Anthony Davis was pretty transparent about his desire not to remain in New Orleans for 2-3 years before it actually happened.
Yeah.
And we were all saying, okay, well, of course he's going to LA. Kobe's his idol, So I started having issues and fears about his back before it ever happened. And we talked about it at length on this pod. And if you wanted to go archive diving, you could probably pull up the audio.
Go on the YouTube page.
Yeah. His back, every time he jumps, I hold my breath.
Yeah.
either his knee, his ankle, his foot, his back, something. Like, the man is just fragile. And I love AD. Like, the player he is, the mindset he is, the style of his game is great, but he just can't stay on the fucking floor.
So let me ask you this. There's no move to be made at this point now, you think, with this core that they can bring in puzzle pieces that can fix this problem and propel them to the title picture again?
Well, I would have said the same thing in 2008, 2 weeks before the Pau Gasol trade, but that totally. I mean, we were, prior to that trade deadline, it was looking like we were not even going to make the playoffs, and then we turned it around and went to the finals.
There's a difference, though. There's a difference in that one. Like, and then here now you have
you had a Kobe that was still at
his
the
prime.
tail end of his peak. Yeah,
LeBron is in his prime, if not out of his prime. AD is not getting better and can't stay healthy.
No, AD is descending.
Yeah,
you're either ascending, peaking, or descending.
Right.
Braun is descending. It's just that he's doing it so incrementally and so much slower than anyone ever.
That's how great he is.
We don't really feel it.
That's how great he is.
Yeah, but I mean, the man is 30. He'll be 38 in 2 weeks. So
well, next month, December 30th.
Oh, I thought his birthday was like December 3rd. My
Close
bad.
enough. Close enough anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he'll be 38 in a month, and he doesn't look or play like it. But there's Father Time is undefeated, so it's like we know it's there. But you're not trading LeBron. He's the only bright spot on the roster. But he doesn't seem all that mentally engaged either. Like, that's not to say he's taking days off or that he's getting lazy or that he's not committed, but it's like within the very small scope of like LeBron's fluctuations in mentality and effort and stuff like that, he feels disengaged.
I surely there's blame to be passed around between Russ and AD and Braun, but to me,
Russ hasn't worked, but I don't put that on him.
No, I agree with him 100%.
He's been him. He's been consistent. He's been the player we all knew he was for the last 3-4 years.
He shows up.
That, like, his shooting's not very good, but like his numbers haven't been. He's not been a bad basketball player. He's been a bad fit. Right. And he was a bad fit before they signed him. Like, those of us that are real fans were saying, no, what are you doing? Sign DeRozan.
Right. No, I agree. This is a Rob Pelinka.
No, I actually, of the three, I mean, I want Russ gone because he's a focal point. He takes attention off the shit that matters, and he's not helping the team win. But I don't have any, like, personal animus towards, or like fan animus towards Russ. Like, I still think he's great. I still root for him. 8 clap all day. Like, Russ isn't the problem. The person who signed Russ is the problem.
Rob Pelinka is the problem, and he got an extension like 2 months ago. Roll me that.
And I get why. He gets along well with Jeannie. He's Kobe's agent. He has had success. Obviously, he built the 2020 roster. But I don't feel like he's getting the job done. So we'll see what happens next year, I guess, or by the trade deadline. But
we shall.
It's an unwatchable product right now. I mean, it's as bad or worse as LeBron's first year with like Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram.
No, but at least that first year before he got hurt, they were competitive.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, right up until Christmas Day when LeBron suffered his first like real injury of his career. Things were looking positive. I mean, they were definitely looking better than they had in the 2-3 years preceding that.
Yeah.
But
they were the 4 seed at that point. They were the 4 seed at that point, actually, that Christmas Day game.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But no, it's an unwatchable product. It's so bad right now.
It's weird hearing you say that because you're one of the most like the biggest Laker fan I know on the planet. Last thing. Something we never touched on actually in the last couple of weeks. Kyrie Irving, the situation of Kyrie and whatnot. Suspended for 5 games, all that. What's your thoughts on all that?
I've personally bounced around a lot on this.
Go ahead. Do you think? What's your thoughts on Kyrie?
To kind of start at the beginning and take us all the way through, like, Kyrie did something exceedingly stupid and harmful, posting this, like, Black Israelite conspiracy crap, which, let's call it exactly what it is. It is anti-Semitic conspiracy theory bullshit that is harmful to Jewish people. And like so many conspiracy theories, whether it's QAnon or the cabal of the left wing eating babies and all of this crap.
Pizzagate, I missed that.
This shit all roots back to the same source, and that is European anti-Semitism of the late 1800s and early 1900s. The stuff that gave us the protocols of the elders, like most of this crap is all has a common ancestor in the protocols of the elders of Zion. And if we've talked about this book a little bit on the show in the past, but the protocols of the elders of Zion is a propaganda book that was reportedly released by Russian intelligence within the French, I guess within France, to foment anti-Semitism, to foment pogroms, to foment political unrest within Western Europe. And the ideas put forth in that book are the underpinnings of a lot of the stereotypes and bullshit that we hear in anti-Semitic spaces. And like I said, there's commonality here between QAnon, between Pizzagate, between Nazis, and between Black Israelites and that segment of, Black anti-Semitism. So I think we need to call out what it is, and rather than focusing on our individual disagreements between these communities and, sort of like mudslinging over these issues, is really focus on the common enemy, which is white supremacy. That's one. So Kyrie did something exceedingly stupid, and then he didn't take responsibility for it, which is really wrong, and he deserved to be punished for it. However, the treatment of Kyrie Irving has been so uneven and is demonstrative of the global anti-Blackness that we deal with in very specifically in this country, but throughout the world, in the sense of like, how many white boys have been out there on camera screaming the N-word and they still have careers? Looking at you, Riley Cooper, looking at you, Morgan Wallen, and countless others. How is it that Kyrie Irving is effectively out of the league and has this long laundry list of shit?
I could tell you.
But yet, we know why. But yet, the people that are coming for Kyrie aren't keeping that energy for Jeff Bezos. Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Yep.
Amazon still has that shit up to view on Prime. You can still buy the books on Amazon and through Barnes and Noble. And just in the last couple of days, 200 prominent celebrities, including like Deborah Messing and Mila Kunis and others, wrote an open letter to Jeff Bezos saying, take this shit off your site. Stop platforming this hate. Nothing.
That's what I think. Like
they're refusing to do it. So it's like, yo, if you're gonna have that energy with Kyrie and you're gonna torpedo this man's career, keep that energy for Jeff Bezos and Amazon, because
I said the same thing last week on the podcast. Said the same thing also on the podcast that not that I'm not even saying take the shit down. I don't give a fuck either way. Okay, but if the energy is being thrown at Kyrie, then the guy who has control to actually take that shit down is on his platform. Why is it still there in the first place? Criticize Kyrie, no problem with that, but make sure that Mr. Bezos gets some.
Kyrie did something wrong. He should be held. He was then indignant about it when it was pointed out to him that both what he did was factually incorrect and hateful.
Right.
Those things, like he needs to be held accountable for that. But the outcome of that accountability and the manifestation of that accountability is so anti-Black that it's disgusting, and there's not enough recognition of that, and the accountability surrounding the whole conversation is not even-handed.
You were saying while we know that, the reason why I think that he's getting shit from the Nets has nothing to do with race at all. Also, I think this is them sticking to him because of the frustration the last 3 years, the mandate shit. Him not want to get vaccinated.
Yeah, I think this is just a convenient excuse to get him off their books, because, like, obviously Kyrie in Brooklyn was not working long before this.
Yeah, this is icing cake at this point. So they want to give him the fuck you. That's all.
Yeah, I mean that's like when somebody is a really terrible employee, but you don't actually have the documentation you need to fire them, and then they do something that's really kind of flimsy, but it at least gives you the thing on paper that you need to give them their walking papers. Right. That's what this is.
And I can't lie, dude.
I think I get it. I think that to me is the least bothersome part of all of this.
Right. Like, I
To me,
can't lie.
it's more about the bullshit lie of like we're not talking about white supremacy, and we're not
Right.
talking about anti-blackness, but we're focusing on Kyrie's anti-Semitism, which I think to me felt kind of accidental. I don't believe that like a great
Oh,
comparison is like I think Ye is on some shit that is anti-Semitic, and
he's a dumb
has
fuck.
and he has continued to harp and double down on the
Yes.
same
Yes.
thing.
On stupidity.
I think Kyrie probably didn't fully understand the breadth and gravity of what he was doing, and like he said himself, he's an omnist or omniist or however the hell you say it. That like he believes,
Ominous.
yeah, something like that. That he believes all people are equal and even footed, and I can pick that apart too. Through the lens.
I think
of
Kyrie's a curious kid, but he means
yeah,
well intentioned.
I think he's a faux intellectual that he wants to be perceived as the smartest guy in the room, and I think he's a very bright individual. But I don't think he's very good at research, and I don't think he has enough people around him who tell him he's on some bullshit when he needs it, which happens to a lot of rich and famous people, irrespective of race or how or why they're famous or anything. If you're rich and powerful, people around you tell you what you want to hear because they want to keep the gravy train coming.
Damn right.
So, yeah, I feel like Kyrie's anti-Semitism is a little more accidental or unintentional than Kanye's. That doesn't mean he doesn't bear responsibility for the things that he said and done, but I think that lumping the two of them together and saying like these two hate all Jewish folks and we got to cut them off and cancel it, I think that is some bullshit, and that is representative of a lot of the anti-blackness that we're talking about. But
to me, it comes
crap.
down to intentions. I think Kyrie is well intentioned.
Yeah,
Kanye West,
I do.
not so much.
I don't think Kanye West has good intentions as a human being, and I think that Kyrie Irving absolutely does. I think generally when he wakes up in the morning, when he's putting one foot in front of the other, he's not trying to harm anybody.
Right.
Kanye doesn't give a fuck who he hurts.
Exactly. All right, Mark. That was an awesome podcast as always.
Yeah, man, we got it in today.
Yeah, nice hour podcast as we always do. You want anything want to plug? Anything you want to anything going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to keep plugging HAC, Haitian American Caucus's efforts in Florida to raise funds for hurricane relief. And again, you can support our efforts. Tap in with everything that we're doing by visiting us on socials at HAC_US. It's the same handle on all platforms. Or by texting Ian Relief, all one word, IANRELIEF, to 44321 to connect with HAC, become a member, donate to everything we're doing, and learn more about our ongoing efforts to support the Haitian community in Lee County. Yeah, and then I'd say follow me on Twitter, but I canceled that.
Fucking Elon, man, I'm telling you.
Man, that ship is sinking fast, though.
Hey, he fucked around, found out quickly, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Good job,
Some
Mark.
of my favorite FAFO of 2022.
Yeah, good job, Mark, as always.
Thank you.